Catherine stood at the exit of Beirut Airport, looking at the bustling city before her, filled with both excitement and nervousness. She had traveled all the way from her quiet little town in Europe, spending 2 whole days to finally arrive at this unfamiliar land. Her suitcase was packed with hope and dreams, and she knew that the opportunities here would change the lives of both herself and her family. The streets were bustling with cars, high-rise buildings mixed with ancient architecture, and the air was filled with the scent of coffee and spices. Beirut was completely different from her quiet hometown. It was lively, vibrant, and full of energy. The taxi driver spoke fluent Arabic to her, though Catherine only understood a few words. She smiled politely and handed him a piece of paper with her address written on it. The scenery outside the window rushed past, and she felt as if she had stepped into a brand-new adventure novel. When she arrived at the temporary apartment she had rented, Catherine leaned against the window and gazed at the city lights twinkling under the setting sun. Her mind wandered to her parents' faces. She had come to Beirut not just for herself, but to send enough money back home so that her family could live a better life. At the same time, she secretly hoped that she might find someone special here and experience an unforgettable romance. The next morning, Catherine walked through the small market at the corner of the street, feeling the heartbeat of the city in the early hours. The local ingredients and goods fascinated her, and the friendly smiles of the people eased her nerves. This was the beginning of a new chapter in her life, and she knew that everything was just starting. If you want to hear more exciting and suspenseful stories like this, please subscribe to our channel, as the next thrilling chapter is coming soon. Catherine was walking through the largest shopping mall in Beirut, carrying several shopping bags. The bustling pace and unfamiliar surroundings made her feel slightly nervous. Just then, one of her bags suddenly tore, and the fruits inside rolled everywhere. She squatted down to pick them up, but noticed a man had already gathered some of them. He smiled and handed her the fruit, saying gently, "The bags here aren't very sturdy. You should watch out." Catherine looked up and saw a confident face. He was wearing a neat shirt, and his eyes were bright and warm. The man introduced himself. "I'm Adam. Nice to meet you." Catherine smiled and thanked him, and the two exchanged a few words. Adam's tone was humorous and charming, which helped Catherine feel at ease. Upon learning that she was new to Beirut, Adam kindly suggested, "Let me treat you to a coffee. You probably aren't familiar with the place. I can recommend some spots." At a quiet cafe, Catherine felt the gentle side of the city for the first time. Adam's relaxed and natural conversation style quickly put her at ease. Through his stories, Catherine learned that Adam was an architect with a deep knowledge of the city's culture and history. His thoughtfulness and wit made her feel less alone in this foreign land. A few days later, Adam invited Catherine to visit an old street he particularly liked. The streets were bathed in the romantic light of dusk, and Adam pointed out the ancient stone walls and balconies adorned with flowers, explaining the history behind them. They shared a traditional meal at a small restaurant, and Catherine began to feel a warm flutter in her heart. Spending time together like this, their bond quickly grew stronger. Adam's company not only brightened Catherine's life, but also made her begin to hope that this connection might turn out to be the most beautiful and unexpected chapter of her life. The winter nights in Beirut always carry a hint of chill. Catherine and Adam walked side by side down the street after just leaving an art exhibition. Suddenly, Adam asked, "Catherine, why did you choose to come here in the first place?" "Did someone suggest you do it?" He looked down at her, his gaze probing. Catherine paused for a moment, then smiled and explained, "I just wanted a change of scenery, to try a new life." At first, such questions didn't bother Catherine. Adam's concern for her even made her feel loved. However, as time passed, these questions became more frequent. One day during dinner, Adam casually asked, Have you ever been in a relationship before? What do your family expect from you?" His words seemed innocent, but Catherine felt a little uncomfortable. Catherine tried to reassure herself, telling herself that perhaps this was just Adam's way of expressing love. He wanted to know more about her past, to understand her completely. She even told herself that this attention was because he cared for her. Yet a sense of unease lingered in her heart. Adam would often call her to check her schedule, and occasionally he would question her new friends. "Are they really trustworthy? You should be more careful," he'd say. One day she planned to visit a church in the old town by herself. When Adam found out, he immediately said, "It's not safe to go alone. Let me accompany you." When Catherine gently refused, explaining that she needed some time alone, Adam's expression darkened. He softly said, "You don't need to be so independent. Why go alone when I'm here?" These small changes were like threads, quietly weaving their way into Catherine and Adam's relationship. Though the sweet moments still existed, the subtle doubts and control began to stir within Catherine. She couldn't find a clear answer, only hoping that these things wouldn't affect their future. In the early hours of the morning, the streets of Beirut were silent. Catherine stood at the door of her apartment, holding a simple suitcase. She glanced back at the door, which had once brought her warmth and sweet memories, but now felt like a shackle weighing heavily on her heart. Taking a deep breath, she dragged her suitcase into the night. A few months ago, she had come to this city with high hopes, believing that Beirut and Adam could change her destiny. But Adam's increasingly possessive behavior had become suffocating. After an intense argument, Catherine realized that the relationship could no longer be saved. She dialed a friend back home and booked a flight back to Europe. Returning to her familiar small town, Catherine felt a long-lost sense of peace. She stayed in her mother's old house, beginning to sort through her chaotic thoughts. Every morning she would take walks by the river, washing away the wounds in her heart with the hometown sunshine and fresh air. To distract herself, she also enrolled in an art class, hoping to reconnect with the self she had lost. However, the shadows did not completely fade. Sometimes Catherine would dream of returning to Beirut, seeing Adam's face, and waking up in a cold sweat. But she firmly believed that her future should not be bound by the pain of the past. She began to actively plan her new life, seeking new opportunities to chase her dreams once more. One morning, an email appeared in her inbox. It was an invitation from a company in Beirut, offering her a high-paying position. The email detailed the attractive aspects of the job, as well as the generous benefits the company had prepared for her. Catherine stared at the screen for a long time, the familiar place names making her heart feel conflicted. Her mind was torn. That land had once been where her dreams began, but it also held the deepest wounds. In the end, she decided to give herself some time. She understood that this was not just a career choice, but an opportunity to face her past and redefine herself. Catherine stepped onto the land of Beirut once more, her heart filled with unease. The airport lights were as bright as ever, and the familiar scents hit her, making it difficult to distinguish whether it was the warmth of memories or the weight of the past. However, the high-paying job and the financial pressures left her with no choice. At first, Catherine threw herself into her new job, trying to focus on her career. But the cost of living in this bustling city quickly surpassed her budget, and after a few months, financial troubles began to weigh on her. One late night, she picked up her phone and hesitated for a long time before dialing Adam's number. When the call connected, his familiar voice came through, full of concern. Without hesitation, he agreed to lend her the money. The next day, Adam personally delivered a check, along with a bouquet of bright red roses. He inquired about Catherine's life with careful, almost cautious words, as though trying to avoid bringing up the painful past. Catherine was wary, but she tried to convince herself that this was simply a one-time act of kindness. From then on, Adam appeared in her life more frequently. Occasionally he would run into her after work, handing her a hot cup of coffee. Or on weekends he would knock on her apartment door, bringing some of her favorite snacks. "Just a friend's concern," Adam would always say with a smile, seemingly trying to downplay the past between them. However, Catherine soon began to feel uneasy. One day, while having lunch at a restaurant near her office, she accidentally spotted Adam sitting not far away, his gaze fixed on her. On another occasion, a colleague mentioned that a strange man had been waiting outside the building for her. Adam's presence in her life grew increasingly frequent and hard to ignore, and he always seemed to know exactly where she was, giving her the unsettling feeling of being watched. Despite maintaining the identity of a friend, Adam's actions made it impossible for Catherine to feel at ease. One night, as she stood by the window, looking out at the neon-lit streets, her thoughts swirled. Beirut, the beautiful city, now felt tinged with a sense of unease that she couldn't shake off. Catherine gradually found her own rhythm at the new company, and her colleague Ethan was humorous and considerate. They got along well, and soon developed a low-key romance. On the nights in Beirut, they would often stroll through the old city's alleys, and Ethan's gentleness gave Catherine the sense of security she had long missed. However, this peace was shattered when Adam found out about it. One evening, while Catherine and Ethan were dining at a cafe on the corner of the street, Adam suddenly appeared. His eyes were cold, but his tone was calm as he said, "Catherine, we need to talk." Ethan tried to ease the tension, but Adam completely ignored him and only stared at Catherine. In that moment, the warm atmosphere of the cafe instantly dropped to freezing point. A few days later, Catherine realized that she seemed to be followed. When she was checking out at the supermarket, she turned around and saw Adam standing not far away, casually watching her. Another time, she stayed late at work, and as she left the office building, Adam's car was parked outside. His expression was a mixture of anger and pleading. He questioned her coldly, asking why she was avoiding him, and almost desperately demanded that she stay away from Ethan. This stalking and confrontations escalated. Catherine's sense of fear grew with each passing day. She began deliberately changing her commuting routes to avoid appearing at certain places. But even then, she still saw Adam's figure occasionally in her line of sight. Once he even barged into her date with Ethan and had an intense argument with him, the scene quickly spiraling out of control. Catherine realized that Adam was no longer the gentle lover he once was. His jealousy and anger had caused him to gradually lose control. His behavior seemed like an invisible net, covering every part of her life. Although she tried to calm the situation through rational conversation, Adam's shadow still followed her everywhere. At night, she would often toss and turn in bed, wondering if this relationship would end in an even more terrifying way. It was a quiet night, with moonlight casting over the streets of Beirut, the air carrying a slight chill. Catherine and Ethan had just finished a pleasant date, saying their reluctant goodbyes at the door of her apartment. As Ethan turned to leave, a faint smile still lingered on her face. However, just as she was about to unlock the door, a familiar yet terrifying figure emerged from the shadows, Adam. Adam's face was grim, his eyes filled with anger and pain. "Why are you doing this to me?" His voice was low but trembling with emotion. Catherine stepped back in alarm, trying to calm him. "Adam, please calm down. I've told you already." But before she could finish, Adam's emotions exploded. He stepped forward, his words sharp, his fury completely unrestrained. Catherine realized the danger and tried to escape, but he grabbed her roughly. As they struggled, her keys fell to the ground, making a harsh noise. In the struggle, Adam's anger became uncontrollable. His eyes turned cold, and suddenly he pulled a small knife from his pocket and stabbed Catherine. She cried out in pain, collapsing to the ground as blood quickly stained the pavement beneath her. Adam froze, staring at her fading light in her eyes. After a brief moment, he dropped the knife and fled in panic. The next morning, a passerby found Catherine's lifeless body at her doorstep and called the police. They arrived quickly, but by then it was too late. Her once beautiful face was now pale and lifeless, lying at the entrance to the home she knew so well. This sudden tragedy shocked the entire city. People discussed it in anger and sorrow, and Adam became the most wanted man in the city from that moment on. Catherine's death shocked the entire city of Beirut, and the police launched a swift investigation. Adam was arrested just 2 days after the incident. When he was brought to the police station, he appeared haggard, but during the interrogation, he admitted to everything. He confessed his deep obsession with Catherine and the anger fueled by jealousy, acknowledging that his possessiveness had clouded his judgment, leading to this irreparable tragedy. Months later, the case went to trial. During the proceedings, the prosecution detailed Adam's gradual shift from gentle pursuit to overwhelming possessiveness, culminating in his ultimate loss of control. Throughout the trial, Adam's face was filled with deep remorse as he choked back tears and said, "I just loved her too much, but I didn't understand what real love was." In the end, the court sentenced Adam to life imprisonment. His life behind cold iron bars would be the price he paid for this distorted relationship. This verdict not only revealed the truth behind the tragedy, but also led the public to a new understanding of love. At Catherine's memorial service, her friends and family, though deeply saddened, shared stories of her dreams and kindness, urging people to be cautious of the hidden dangers in seemingly sweet relationships. Their voices conveyed a strong message. True love should be based on respect and trust, not control and possession. Catherine's story became a heartbreaking lesson, reminding everyone to pay attention to emotional dynamics around them to prevent such a tragedy from recurring.